Hello everyone. In the last video of React documentation, we have gone through some of the basic of React components and how to pass a props. So if we revise from the last video, right, we had two objects, user1 and user2, and we passed those objects to two components. One is a functional component and another is a React class component, and then we render those details into the component itself. So that was the last tutorial. Let's do a revision on that so we can be bit more familiar with those details. So we have this React render option, and we want to create a component. Let's say constant user. I'm using ES6 syntax, which is like which call a arrow function. You can use a normal function as well. Both should work as well. So if we say h1 right there, this is user, and we can render this user, and if we reload, hi there, this is the user. Okay, and now we want to pass some data. So we can pass some data. Let's say obj equal to, we can pass name equal to username, and then we can print those h4 json dot obj. So if we do this, we say that name equal to user, and then if we specifically want to render everything, right, we can say props dot name, props dot user, obj, something I'm doing wrong. Yeah, so props dot obj dot name. So that's how we render a component. So this is a syntax too, because in a JavaScript we cannot just render a JavaScript JSON object. So I just stringify the JSON. We can log here to see what is the passing object we have received, right? And if we inspect, we can see that the object itself is the name itself. We can do destruction as well as obj, and then we can see obj, and we can just directly print the obj itself. We don't need props here. So this will also do the same thing. So let's move on. So after this, let's go on to the next one, is state and lifecycle. So in ReactJS, if you see the documentation, the page introduces the concept of a state lifecycle, blah blah, consider the ticking clock, blah blah blah. So they have given some example. It's look like element hello world, then they are passing the date and they are ticking. I think this example we have shown in the beginning of our code. So every 1 second they are changing the clock object, and they're rendering the whole object itself. So yeah, so here they are adding a local state. Okay, this is very important to know, right, how to declare a local state and then change the state time, something like that. We can do a example of this code. Let's try it out and see how it works. We can remove all this unnecessary code because this is not required anymore. So first thing is we need to have a class component. we can declare a class component like this, right? New file, and we can say import React from extends React dot component constructor props. We can say super props. Then we can say we can say this render function. We can just copy. Then this state equal to. So what it does is it react this object on the constructor has a state which we set the current date of this, and then we are printing this date object, and we can export this component, export default. Now we can just write directly we need to import it, import let's try it out and see. So it is something like this. Okay, so that's how we have this state value. So to explain, I think this is very readable code. So we can have a state value date. If you have multiple data, right, name equal to hide there, and you want to print the name also, you can do that. State dot name. So name equal to hide there. What next? Okay, so this is one of lifecycle method in React. So let's start with some of the basic lifecycle method, right? So to understand this, we need to see a chart in ReactJS, React lifecycle. So this will be just refresher. I mean, very brief. I will speak about. I think this is more easy to understand. So there are number of lifecycle hooks available on the React. So initially it load the setup props and state, then it goes to component will mount, whereby in the same time component receive props and should component update and component will unmount. So these are the very initial lifecycle, but on the sequential basis, right? First it load the setup props and state, then it load the component will mount, and then render, then component did mount. So this is for the mounting part. Then update part we can discuss later, and component did unmount will load when the page exit the component. So we can just copy these two hooks, and we can just log it here. This is component did unmount and component will mount, and then we can log here. This is the render. Oops. So if we just print it out, we see that first it rendered the render and component did mount. Okay, so according to our diagram, right, so we set the prop switches like here. We can say a log set state and props. So we can see that in the constructor label it will set state and props, and then this render, then component did mount. component unmount only happen which we can test it out. How should we do it? Like, okay, so maybe after some second we can remove this component from this, and that way we can do it, right? That's one way, but we can have a click event as well, but we need some state data, right? Let's see how we can do it. There are a number of ways. So how they do it? Component it mount is something which is set the timer. Okay, so they have full example. We can use this as well. So for component did mount, we have the timer component unmount, and this is the tick component. We can use this, and then for timer we can use that timer as well, and then we see what's happening. Okay, so it has the render every time it is rendering the component. Let's see how it work. So we have this state, and then we have this timer ID. I think the state they have set something. Okay, so this state, yeah, so this state, this the timer ID is set upon the set interval, and every 1 second they have this arrow function. Let's treat it this way. This tick, and then every 1 millisecond. So this is a function they are setting here, and component when this is unmount, they will just clear the interval, and the stick is a function which is like this set the state to new date. So every 1 millisecond they are updating the timer ID, which is a component, and which will do something on the date, set a new date, and that's how they're rendering the new date. But how we can remove this from the component? Okay, let's see. Okay, there is some of the thing we need to know, right? It's very wrong to set the state as something like this, because updating a state may be asynchronous, so we cannot set like counter plus in something. Correct way is would be state, we receive the state and props, and then we set the counter and then props dot increment. That's a good way of setting it from the state itself. So this state will always refer to the state of the current component, whereby whenever there is a change of the state, we can get the state from here and props also from here. That's a good way. And another way is like you can, instead of this arrow function, you can set it as a function as well. So let's see, this is update merge. So we can set state like whenever we fetch a post, we can set the post by like this, and we can set the comments like this also. We will see this maybe later when we call a function or API. We can do this thing. And formatting date, okay, this is can be a separate function which will perhaps which we can try now as well. So this is something which we can do as well. Okay, instead of whole thing of this, we can just say this, and then date equal to dot date. This will also work for us. Yep. So we can have multiple clock as well. Yep, we can have that. If we want to set multiple clock, we can do this way also. So yep, this work. What next? Yeah, I think that's it for this tutorial. I will request you to look into this different life cycle. So in the next tutorial we're gonna explain more details on the life cycle as well. So on the just for the last moment check, for the component unmount can be only check if we remove a item from the list, which I think let's see it on the next video. That's it. See you on the next video.